Good morning and welcome to another edition of The Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. Good morning, John Salati.
Morning, Salon Phil. Glad to be back again.
Glad to see you again. Good morning, Dr. Cheney.
Good morning.
And we have a very special guest with us this morning. But before I start, I want to thank all of the viewers. You know, we started, this is the 6th episode, I think. And already the last episode had over 13,000 views. And we're up to, I think, close to 100 subscribers. And the messages, the emails I have coming in for the support, the attorneys with their advice, it's all great. Thank you all so much for the support. Thank you so much for the suggestions and the comments that come in through the email, which is thelegalzone@remuslaw.com. Also, I want to point out that even though on this show we talk about the law and injustice, we tackle the injustice, we also give the opportunity for the one going through the injustice the opportunity to speak. Oftentimes when someone is going through something and they're being treated unfairly, they feel as though they're in a bubble, that no one could hear what's going on because this injustice is going on, and here they are suffering in it, and no one seems to care or hear. So we have our clients come on and they're able to voice their frustration, what's going on, and it's extremely therapeutic to the one experiencing the injustice. Is giving them a microphone and saying, here, tell the world what's going on with you. And I want to point out, we've had clients up until this point, but we don't exclude anyone else. The gentleman today, he's not a client of Remus. He's doing this pro se with the advice from John Salati. We've reached out to, and again, we're a very neutral, objective platform. We don't judge whether someone did something right or wrong. I had a conversation with Mr. Cosby's attorney this past week, and I invited him on the show. Just an opportunity to speak about what he's experienced, right or wrong. And at this time, they're not doing interviews, but when that changes, we may have him on. So Mr. Cosby, if you're watching, come on. We would love to hear from you. All right. And again, the subscribe button on the bottom. So as usual, when we go into our discussions of injustice, I talk about some area of law. We have law students, people preparing to take the bar, or people who just may want to know about this. So let's talk about two words very quickly. One word is negligence. We all know what this means on a broad level. When someone is negligent, it tends to mean someone who's careless. But in law, there's a term called negligence. And negligence stems from a duty that is owed to anyone, to someone. That duty is breached, and the breach results in damage. So what does that mean? Everyone has some sort of duty. If you own a house and you have guests come over, there's a duty to make sure that the guests that come in, they don't get hurt. If you're driving down the street and there's other cars on the road, you owe those other drivers a duty to not be looking on your phone, texting. If you're a teacher, you owe a duty to your students. If you're an employer, you owe a duty to your employees and the people who come into your store. There's always a relationship, landlord, tenant. And if you are careless and you do something or you fail to do something and someone is hurt by it, you could bring a claim in negligence. Now there's another term, gross negligence. Now, what is that? Gross, not in the sense of being nasty or gross. Gross is meaning huge, a big, careless negligence. So what's that? An extreme departure from the ordinary care owed. Usually it's shown in someone being reckless and a total disregard of another's rights. I like to give an example when we talk about gross negligence. You're at a party. I was going to say a club, but the party, and you're dancing, and someone comes and they step on your toe, your big toe. They weren't paying attention. Maybe someone would say, "Oh man, you was negligent. You just stepped on my toe. I'm sorry." They go back dancing. But that same night, they come and they step on that same toe again. And then again. And by the end of the night, it's 5 times they've stepped on that one big toe. That's gross negligence. When someone does something with gross negligence, it almost seems as though it was intentional. They tried to hurt you. You can't necessarily prove it, but you can prove, based on the act, that it was extreme and they could care less about what they were doing. All right? Negligence, the damages that stem from negligence, you could only sue for the actual damages. But with gross negligence, they say because it was so extreme and because it was borderline intentional, you get to go in for punitive damages. All right, so you see the two differences. As you listen to the gentleman's story today, start thinking in your mind, is this negligence or is it gross negligence? Mr. Mahdi Shabazz.
Yes, sir.
The great Mahdi Shabazz from Washington, D.C.
Silver Spring, Maryland.
Silver Spring, Maryland now, right?
In 30 years.
So tell us, what is going on with you?
Well, and it goes back to prior to the conviction. I took my goddaughter to open a bank account. She was in high school at McKinley Tech. And I took her to TD Bank on 7th and I Street in Northwest. And the customer service representative, someone I'm familiar with because I was banking there at the time for about like 3 years. And she waited on us. The bank was hardly nobody in the bank. And, you know, we had a cordial relationship. And after I opened the account, as we was leaving, we all embraced one another, laughed, and she introduced me to the new bank manager, and we went on about our business. And within a few days, I get a call from a detective saying that I thought it was a prank call. She said that she had a warrant out for my arrest. And I said, a warrant out for my arrest for what? And she said, for an assault. And I said, assaulting who? She said, Mr. Shabazz, you was at TD Bank or such and such and such. And right away, I knew exactly who she was talking about because this particular female has severe mood swings. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the analyzation of that. But, you know, some days she happy, some days she come to the bank, she don't speak to nobody. She does that. She was doing it with her colleagues and whatnot. And, you know, people suffer with those type of, I have relatives are like that. And so a trial ensued. It was a misdemeanor sexual abuse. That's when they told me that I was just flawed. I said, what did I do?
So she accused you of a sexual assault.
Yeah. She said that I bit her on her breast. And the whole, everything, the cameras were there. I mean, you know, you can see, and the judge said even, he was new to the court, then Judge Stuart Nash in DC Superior Court. And
So the trial was in DC.
it was in DC. It was in the District of Columbia.
Okay.
And this was a status hearing. And at that time, he was not supposed to be the sitting judge on that case because it was in domestic violence. You know, it was when we had the hearing, it was in domestic violence court, and this was not a domestic violence case. And he told my attorney at the time, who was Rudy Acree, who was the deputy director of public defender services in DC now, that he was going to take the case. And I said, well, how could he take the case and it's not a domestic violence? I said, because if I'm convicted, I said, to me, this cracker wanted to convict me. And I said, and if he do, I said, that's a domestic violence, and he just passed that law. It will stick forever. And he said, he can't do this because whatever the case would be. But anyway, they ended up keeping it in domestic violence before him. And I told Rudy, I said, this devil is going to convict me. I said, he's going to convict me. And no matter what, and Rudy had to go to his new position. So an attorney by the name of Sherm Weathers took over. And she thought she had a pretty good case because we had the cameras and I had a witness. She had no witnesses. Nobody from the bank came and testified on her behalf or anything. It was just her, and she was just saying that she was delusional. I just felt like, I mean, I'm going through these things that certain people I've seen, you know, men and women go through, I don't know, for attention. And I was like, what is going on with this chick? And then he convicted me. And it was like a devastating moment because I'm an openly gay man. I've been with my partner for about 20 years at that time around that, because we've been together 30 years last year before he passed away last year. And it just devastated us. We had a baby in our custody when he was 1 week old, up until he was 2 weeks short from his 10th birthday. The court took him out of our custody.
Because of this?
Malachi, our son.
Was it because of this conviction?
Yes, because of this conviction, and because they placed me on the registry. And
so we're getting to that.
Yeah,
so
we're getting into that. After the conviction, he told I did 8 days in DC jail. And he says, you know, it's supposed to be 180 days suspended, you know, how to do that crap. But so I'm just like, I can't believe it. My partner he was an elderly person, and because he was like 18 years older than me, you know, so he was just devastated, Caucasian man, just devastated. And I always had to be strong. I kept telling him, I said, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna get through this. And we had, I got out of DC jail, went to see Sosa.
Do you remember what year this is?
2010. December 2010 was the conviction date.
Okay.
In DC Superior Court. And they transferred my probation to Maryland. I had this white woman named Jennifer Count at the time, and she kept insisting on transferring me to Maryland. And I said, well, I have a condo in DC, and I said I had a nonprofit. I just started trying to get it on its feet, and all of that crashed. She wanted me to, because I lived in Maryland, she said she's transferring my case to Maryland. And I found out after that misdemeanors are not priorities to transfer unless the person wants to be transferred because they live there. You know, like young people live, or they work out there and whatnot. But I was working in DC. But her reasons for putting me in Maryland, because Maryland they was passed a law that that October 10th that they can make you register as a sex offender from another jurisdiction. But I knew that law did not come into play because prior to my conviction, I was looking up all of this stuff because I thought about that. And when she said you had to register as a sex offender, I said, this can't be. I said, this didn't rise to no sex offense, your misdemeanor sexual abuse. And then the judge, in his hatred for Black men, he convicted me of a misdemeanor simple assault and a sexual assault at the same time. And according to what I was told by lawyers, criminal lawyers, that he couldn't do that. But you know, white people do what they want to do. I mean, we live in their world, we were slaves, but they still treat us like slaves. And there's always an attack on strong Black men and strong Black women. by any means necessary. And I was an activist in DC for 30 years at that time. And they saw me on television, and I was accomplishing a lot of victories for a lot of people who were in distress situations. So they had it out for me. They had it out for me.
So did it eventually end up being transferred to Maryland?
Yes, right away. According to those rules, it was supposed to be like a 45-day or 30-something day, research or whatever. I mean, some type of evaluation and all that. But she transferred me immediately. And when I went there, and I was telling the lady, I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. And that's when it clicked. The positions that I have been in, challenging formidable people in the District of Columbia and powerful seats, on the news, activism, and being effective, I was a threat. And I realized that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, that you will be a threat to them when you wake up, when you give up their names, and then the attack comes on, and I receive it. And I was on the registry. She made me register.
So you're on the sexual registry in Maryland.
In Maryland. Not, DC didn't require registration because DC.
That's an important point to clarify here for the people listening.
Yeah, DC. Yeah.
DC law, he could not be put on the registry in the District of Columbia. That the misdemeanor sex offense is not eligible for the DC registry. So that's a critical piece of, okay, remember that's going to come up later. So.
Yeah, and so Maryland told me it was a requirement, and I kept asking them, what law are you citing? And she gave me 11701. So I went and looked that up, and then after that, she gave me 3308. And on all of those laws that she cited were related to child pedophilia, or one in authority like a teacher or a principal who molested a student, or a Boy Scout leader or a minister or whatever the case. It didn't rise to that, but they wanted me on the sex registry, and all I could think about is, since they didn't put me in jail, they put me on probation, and they still getting funded. And when I kept writing them, calling them, and the director, Carol Shelton of the Sex Offense Registry, did her best to avoid me. Picked up the phone one time and I said, Miss Shelton? She said, yes. I said, this is Mahdi Shabazz. She said, could you hold on for a moment, please? And then she gave me to her secretary, and I haven't talked to her since. And I sent her letters. She never responded. I sent Elizabeth Bartholomew, the manager. She was the main culprit on that registry. She's like the pit bull for her, for the manager, for the director.
So in what year would you place?
All of this is in 2010.
Okay, so you're on
December
the
2010.
registry in 2010.
December 2010.
December 2010. Was there ever a time, and you feel that you weren't supposed to be on the registry?
Oh, I didn't feel. I knew I wouldn't. I knew I was supposed to be. Salam, I have a lot of friends or acquaintances, let me put it that way, who are very influential lawyers, and they did research for me right away. They told me this is not a sex offense. They don't, and we do know that white people do what they want to do. They do whatever they do until you show them that they're in the wrong. So after 6 years, I mean, but during those 6 years, I'm constantly writing, trying to get off the registry. And she sent me a letter in 2012 saying that after reviewing my case law from the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, Maryland, that I have met across whatever to be on the sex offense registry for 15 years. And I said to her, I knew that was not true. I said, it's hard to say something else, but I said, this chick has really lost her mind. And I said, they're not gonna stick this to me like this. And she knew the harm that it would cause. I lost custody of my son. My nonprofit was slandered. My adopted children in the community who had troubled households and runaways, I was a very powerful mentor in their lives. And some of them would get locked up and whatnot, and they would be released to me, and it became a major problem. that the Department of Corrections and DC Juvenile releases a young teenage boy to a man who was convicted on the Maryland sex. I mean, just anything to destroy him and myself. There was just several, and then even had other guys that I mentored who had emotional problems, because my partner and I, we lived affluently, and they took that opportunity to make false claims against me. And just, it was like a ripple effect that
was your picture ever?
Oh, yeah, just gave it to my neighbors and everybody. I mean, they did, and I heard they were supposed to do this one time, but Detective Michael Parker, he was a devious white boy. He just sent it, I had it going to my neighbors and whatnot, but my neighbors gave me the copies. You know what I mean? And
Copies of what exactly?
It's the posting that he's a sex offender. You got a sex offender in your community. They went all over, and they would, some of my neighbors would give it to me, tell me or call me and say they did some. Just I never really mingled with too many people around here, but some people moved out. Some people just distanced themselves from us all along. And I guess my friend couldn't deal with the total isolation, so I guess it stressed him, but it didn't bother me because I don't want to be bothered with too many people anyway.
Did there ever come a time where Maryland admitted that what
Yes.
they did was wrong?
Oh yeah. And 2016, I met an attorney by the name of Nancy Forrester. She was the state of Maryland director over public defender services, and for many years. And she wrote after, I don't know if she did it when she was the director, or I think it was after, because I think they terminated her, and she opened a law firm, and she was getting men off the sex offense registry, and she wrote to the state Court of Appeals, Doe versus Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. And she talked about people in my situation, that the state cannot retroactive. The Court of Appeals ruled that this is not a retroactive, I'm gonna say application, and or an offense, and that they had to remove me. That a tier 1 4th-degree sex offense only applies to children. And this woman was not a child who said that I allegedly bit her on her breast. So that made me feel good. Within days after she filed the declaratory judgment, it took them like 90 days to answer. And she filed a motion for default. And she just texted me and said, "You're off the registry." Because when I brought the information to her, she said, "You're gonna be off the registry." I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "I'm more sure than anything." She said, "This is what I was telling them, that they would do this to somebody." And so she said, "You'll be off." And she said, "I'll just file a declaratory judgment to put pressure under it, but you'll be off." And I was off. And when he gave me the letter was very clear. Registration not required in Maryland. And then it says, you did not meet all the criteria for registration in Maryland.
Is this the letter?
Yes, and then, yes, it is. It says based on records from the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, as well as comparison of Maryland and the District of Columbia law, the Maryland Sex Offense Registry has determined, so a determination has been made that you did not meet all the criteria for registration in Maryland. The crime of misdemeanor sexual abuse, she's telling me it is a registrable offense in this state. And then she went on talking about the docket entry that I filed a motion in the wrong court in DC because I was convicted in DC to get off, and the judge denied that motion. But then she says, however, Maryland cannot require registration because you didn't meet the residential requirements at the time of the offense. She knew this all along.
And this was this letter is dated 2016.
16. So I was on the registry for like 6 years.
Wow.
And she knew it. And so after I got off the registry, I decided to sue C. Sosa and Maryland, and I went and filed in federal court because I wanted to sue DC, C. Sosa in federal court. And I was doing all this pro se. I had a lawyer and whatnot, but something came up in 2017. We had to withdraw, and I started back after we dealt with that situation because they retaliated against me again and opening false cases that make it, I mean, it was just, they went hard. Having a child protective services coming in, saying that the little boy that me and my partner had, we molested him, and I'm listening to what the little boy is saying, and they're asking him that me and my partner do. He said nothing about my partner. Nothing. He said nothing about me. I mean, you could hear them leading him, the detective Beersley, Timothy Beersley, and was this Calandria? What's her name?
Calandrio.
Yeah, she was the child and family service lady, and this white woman we need to talk to you. You're not talking to me for what?
I just want to interrupt a moment here to make clear. By this time, the boy, Malachi, is like 18 years old.
No, he was 14, John. He was
14,
because he's 20 now.
He was no longer a little child anymore.
He had been out of my custody.
Things from way back, like 2009. It's now 2017. 8 years later, he's no longer a little child. All right, he's not quite 18 yet, but he's older. So they're now interviewing this teenager
who's troubled and in and out of juvenile detention. And his life went on a downward spiral after he left me. His mother died of AIDS. His father was emotionally messed up, and his father's brother is a drag queen and dresses up in female clothes on 24 hours a day, calling himself LaWanda Young. And he was determined that he was going to get the child from me, and the mother didn't want her son raised around a man wearing dresses. Now, I know people have relatives that do that and whatnot, but all gay people don't act that way. And all gay people don't like all gay people for whatever reasons. And I just want to put that out there. But
the gist of all of this is they put you on the registry in Maryland for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finally came to the realization that this is something that we should not.
Well, they didn't come to they was forced, Salam. They didn't come to they knew it all along. It's like these white people, this is what they get off doing. If you don't have the means, the knowledge, the know-how, the resources, I had time to do it because I didn't work. And so I had access to libraries and information, and I had the time to get me vindicated.
So I understand. So for the 6 years, you were fighting the entire time for them to take your name off.
Right.
And then
when they gave me the letter, and then when they opened the false claim saying that this little boy that we had raised said they'd make the allegation, and they arrested me, I couldn't be arraigned because they left my name on the registry. And that was in July of 2017. So after I got...
So they kept him in jail. He couldn't post bail.
Right.
One of the injustices. Because even though it's a year past being taken off the registry, the actual Maryland system still had him on, so they wouldn't let him post bail for this other thing that they now arrested him for, only because they still said, no, you're still on the registry a year later. So again, that's
exactly what happened.
Still impacting him in a very direct way legally a year after we're taking you off.
And the attorney that I had at that time when I was being arraigned that night, and he just went off because he was like, "You can't do this." He said, "You're going to be sued for this." He said, "You violate this man's constitution." And I understood what the commissioner was saying because he has a job to do too. I was not angry at him because in my mind I said, "I'm gonna get them." I said, "All they doing." And then right away, when he called them that morning, she released me. The new manager released me. Elizabeth Bartholomew is no longer the manager. She's in another division. And that came after I filed that federal suit, and it was the brief was very comprehensive. So she knew that I was telling the truth, and the attachments, the exhibits and whatnot. So that was in federal court. Then I filed in 2019 in Montgomery County in Rockville in Circuit Court. And I'm suing them for a large amount of money. And being pro se, they didn't take me serious because they looked at it like, oh, okay. So October, I had a hearing. I had lost a relative, and the hearing was coming up during that same week, and I went to court and I told judge I asked for a continuance. I did sign a release to have my record expunged, and that's how Montgomery County got off, because I was suing them as well as the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. And so I said to her I needed to continue this, and she was asking me why, and I told her. And the state of Maryland, Judith Barr, Assistant Attorney General, and I'm gonna tell you about that hussy. That's exactly what she is. And she gets up and say to the court, Your Honor, I respectfully ask the court that Mr. Shabazz, that this is the third time that he brought these same claims. So she was familiar with the complaint. And but she acted like she didn't when she got her ass kicked by Judge Cho in the January hearing. But we had Judge McCauley gave me the extension because I'm pro se, and so December 2nd was the hearing for the original complaint. But I forgot all about that. I amended the complaint. So December 2nd we have to go to the hearing. The state doesn't show up. I'm the only person in the courtroom, and the judge asked me, "Are you Mr. Shabazz?" I said, "Yes, I am, Judge Burrell," and in Montgomery County. And I'm calling the name because it's necessary, because I want to show you a pattern of behavior. And she has her clerk to call the state and find out where is she and all this.
Who's representing the state?
Judith Barr, Satan in person. And I asked the judge, I said, Your Honor, could you tell me what's the holdup? And she said, we're trying to get in touch with the state. I said, if that was me, you wouldn't do that for me. So she told them to call my case. And she asked me, was there a hearing? And I said, yes, there was in October. And she said, well, I don't know why the state is not here. They were supposed to be here at 10 o'clock. And so she says, now it's 11:07. So the state motion to dismiss is denied. And then she said, without prejudice. I said, well, why are you giving her another opportunity to revisit it? She said, well, this is what she probably asked me to do. It's something about certain Black people when they get in position. They want to always aid white people against us. White people don't do that when it's their turn and we there. They with prejudice. If it was me, the judge, I would say, if you ask me, it would be without prejudice, because she's not here. She had a responsibility to be here, and she's in a very powerful position. So she did never revisit that because she knew there was an amended complaint.
Is the case ongoing now?
It's ongoing right now, and I'll tell you about that. But I wanted to get to the January about this is the amended complaint. Now it's the same allegation, but the Montgomery County Child and Family Services is no longer a part of this particular part, because after I got out and they couldn't go to trial because the boy came to his senses, I guess, and they just knew that he didn't want to face me and say it because he know that was not true. So they dropped this. Then they dismissed the case, that charge against me. So in order for me to get that expunged off my record, they had me to sign a waiver that I would not sue the police department or challenge family services. And I went on and did that because I said the Department of Corrections is
suing now. Who's on?
I'm suing the Department of Public Safety and Corrections Services, Elizabeth Bartholomew and Carol Shelton in their individual capacity.
Okay, so that's and they tried to file a motion to dismiss, but you beat that.
Yes, I did. Judge Cho in January pressed Judith Barr on some issues of limitation and immunity. And that's what she thought she was going to come in there with that. This is Judith Barr, and but Judge Cho I said she was like an angel sent from God. And she was not a white woman or a black woman. She was neutral. You know what I mean? She had nothing to gain in this. And she went through my complaint. And I could tell that she read the complaint in detail. She made it clear that she read the complaint in detail. It was well written. She said, I read every word of it. And then she said to Ms. Barr, she wanted to press her on some things, ask her some questions about limitations. Then she asked her about, and then but she kept saying the women reasonably believe. That was her only thing. She cited no case law or no nothing. So Judge Cho said, okay, bitch, we gonna get over this. Okay, we're gonna get, okay. Then she asked her about immunity issues. So she kept saying that, at the time the judge looked at, and it was almost like the judge said, chick, didn't you read his complaint? Did you not read his complaint? I know you're supposed to defend your client, but you an attorney. You're supposed to use some goddamn common sense. So my thing is, it's like and then she kept saying, well, they reasonably believe at the time that he should be on the sex offense. It's a complicated. The judge is looking at this chick like, don't you think I was a lawyer and a prosecutor too? Don't you think I've done these cases before? Don't you think we researched these laws before we come in the courtroom? So anyway, at the end of the day, Judge Cho ruled in my favor. I had 7 counts. She dismissed 2 and gave me 5. And
that's where we are now. I want to turn it over to Dr. Chaney, because I know she has tons of questions.
Okay, I apologize.
Run out of time. So Dr. Chaney, I'm going to turn it over to you. Questions?
Mr. Shabazz, sorry about what you're going through. I need to just explore with you, if you would, just briefly tell us about the order in which the accusation of interacting with the bank person happened. What happened first? You hugged the person?
It was a hug. We hugged, hi, how you do, goodbye. My goddaughter hugged her. She's 17 at the time. We left. And my goddaughter, I think it was that she had a thing for me. Because, I don't look like a gay guy. I don't talk like a gay guy. And I don't act like a gay guy. So she probably had it. And I could tell she liked me, but I didn't think she liked me like that. And my goddaughter said women can be very vicious when she thought that I was coming in the bank, and she opened an account, and my name was on her account because she was a minor, and her parents let me do it because she's my goddaughter, and they're from Africa. And I took money out of my account to put in her account, and she probably thought I was some type of sugar daddy. This is my goddaughter's analysis of it. She's now 28 years old, and she's a licensed psychologist. So all her life she's been playing with folks' minds. So she's been reading people, and she normally hit them. She's very, very smart. And so I think and I felt what she said. After my spirit is pretty there. And it was, I've never, other than the fact that when I would come in the bank sometime, I would say, look, this chick is here. Because they have them standing at the door greeting people at TD Bank back in those days. It was just different. And welcome to the bank, welcome to TD Bank, and whatnot. And you coming in, sometimes you'd be like, but then sometimes, but anyway.
Okay.
That's how it started. And that was it. It was nothing. It was just
right.
Nothing.
I want to know, and so people were all around in the bank, right?
It was.
And then I want to know what happened next.
It was her coworker.
So it's the hug,
and we leave.
Well, wait a minute. I thought there was an introduction to somebody else.
No. Her bank manager came as we was leaving because nobody was in the bank other than the employees. Yes,
but I want to know, is it the bank manager you're introduced to after the hug?
She introduced me after we hugged the bank manager. She said, this is Mr. Shabazz. He's a regular here and blah, blah, blah. And I introduced to my guy. It's all caught on camera. I mean,
but the hug is first.
Bye. It ain't like on attack, you know what I mean?
The hug is first.
Yeah.
And then the assault is part of the hug. The allegation of assault is part of the hug. But then why would there be an introduction to the bank?
I'm 6'3", and she comes here. I had to pick her ass up and bite her on her breast if that was the case. And that wasn't the case. And
But
I
then
ain't trying to be
after
too
all,
vulgar. I just want to be real about this. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
this has been a traumatizing situation in my life.
I'm sorry about that.
That's
But
like,
after that, then there's an introduction,
the
right?
introduction was to after we embraced the manager come over.
Right.
He was a short gay guy, and I mean, gay people, we recognized each other, and he was attracted to me. I mean, I could see that. So
But
she came, and she introduced us, and he came right over and whatnot. I'm saying there's nobody, because I was surprised that the other manager had left, because I haven't been there. You know, I normally go to the ATM machine to get money out and deposit it through the machine. But she wanted an account, so I told her we can come this day. And then she said, "This is our new manager." And he came over and introduced me. Then we left. Then I get a call a
right,
few days later. That's it.
it just seems to me that
Well,
if I'm assaulted, I wouldn't be introducing you to
thank you
anybody.
very much.
But I
Well,
just want to
that's
know the order.
intelligence. She wasn't insulted. There was no assault there. There
Right.
was. I
And
think,
then
and number one, being a black woman, if a man bit her on her breast, the way
she
they
would
will
probably
go
punch
hard.
you.
What you talking about? Okay, they would have turned that bank out. Okay, so we know. But the white man wanted to punish me. You come here, I'm tall, bald, well dressed, well spoken. I live in an affluent community and whatnot. I'm not afraid to speak up. And he wanted to get my ass. That's all. But you know what? And after the convention, Dr. Cheney, by me growing up like I did in the religious, my grandparents very holy sanctified and whatnot, my aunts evangelists and whatnot, mother church people and whatnot, it came to me. All things work together for good for those that love the Lord. It was
Okay.
meant for me to go through this because there are some other people in my situation that know that they should never been on this registry, and God used me. God don't need 50 people to defeat nobody. He just raises one up, and He used me to take them to task. And we are now in discovery for the third time because she refuses to give me the employee's information. She asked me for it, even though she have it already, just trying to stretch the time out and whatnot. But now it's my turn to ask you for documents. I asked them for the social security number, the bank statements, and they like, I'm not giving this nigga my information. You must be crazy. She told that she had these white women believing that they had immunity. She even filed a motion for summary judgment, and the judge said, "We're gonna I'm gonna deny your motion for summary judgment because there's a dispute here." And then he turns around and compliments me, Judge Borton.
So,
He says,
Dr. Chang, let her ask some more questions because we got a lot of
"Okay,
questions.
okay,
Okay. What I'm thinking now is about the notion of a victim and villain theory. Would you tell us who you think the real villain and victims are in this, other than yourself? Um, who are they? Because
there's no,
if you
no,
had a list for maybe about two or three, who are they?
well, there is no victims in it as far as I know. You know, I don't know any other victim other than myself. But I'm the one who was victimized.
Okay.
I was one who was falsely accused. You
Okay.
know, and my thing says battery low, so I have to, oh my God, I clicked off. How do I get back on?
You're on.
You're on.
But I don't see you all. Oh boy, I'm gonna leave that
So
alone.
just keep talking.
Okay, well, um, uh,
The villains.
yeah, the villain, yeah. But it's the Department of Public Safety. It started with the white woman in C. Sosa, and I believe that the two groups naturally being the probation for the district and the probation for the Montgomery County, that they both decided that they would have to build a pact and put these niggas on the sex offense registry, which if they were regardless, and knowing that we didn't, and the law says it, and I'm just like, it's just what it is, you know.
Okay. If you were asked to describe your experience as an accused person, what would you say?
I mean, naturally, it was, I would say, horrifying because I had a partner at the time. I could have dealt with this much better if he wasn't involved, because it damaged his job, his career, you know, money problems, house facing foreclosure, I lost opportunities for employ grants for my nonprofit, and um, even job opportunities. I had a buddy who just passed away. He was going to hire me in 2012, but he said because of that, he said he couldn't do it because, and I understood that. He couldn't bring that kind of attention to him. So it's just what it is, Dr. Cheney. It really brought a lot of stress in my household. And these women knew that it would bring that kind of stress, but they don't care. You know, the devil don't care. And they are, in fact, the devil. These are vicious women. And Judith Barr, no, she has no case. We have gotten the history on the laws that she cited, and it just attacking Black men and women, trying to bring them to a total destruction of their life. But I really believe that I will prevail in this case, as Judge Borton said, based on that letter. And then they did, I guess they accidentally sent me the letter, another letter that says is dated the same date, August the 24th, 2016, and it's the same language, but in the middle of it, it says, however, if the convicting jurisdiction does not require registration and the individual does not meet the residential requirements at the time of the offense, Maryland cannot require registration. And according to your registration has been removed from all website and associate databases. But during that discovery document, I've discovered that they had an FBI file on me, that they redacted the number and the information. And I was like, this is absolutely crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
All right, Dr. Cheney, any more?
Only other thing I was wondering, we hear about what Mr. Shabazz went through, the public humiliation, the posting of your picture and all your, well, enough public information or personal information that would ostracize you in society.
Oh, yeah.
What about the exoneration list? That exists, I believe. Were you placed on the exoneration list? And do you know that?
No, because no, I don't. And I know, and I'm sure they didn't place me on nothing because they would.
See our screen?
Say it again.
Can you see our screen?
I can't see your screen, but you say you can see. I'm not trying to click too many.
I think this is the posting. John, is this what the guy was?
Yeah, this is the posting, the kind of thing that was delivered to Mr. Shabazz's neighbors.
Wow. So
Handed out by the Montgomery County Police. So here are the charges, here are the convictions, here's where he lives, blah, 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 blah.
Everything. And when I asked them for their information, now that we are past the.
So wait a minute, really quick, because I want to make it clear. Someone went above and beyond to print the selected registrant out and post this on everyone's door in the neighborhood?
Yeah, they get the Montgomery County Police has, they have the Special Victims Unit. They have a sex offense unit from the Montgomery County who just for the state of Maryland, but whoever, all the counties have their police division, have a section that deals with the sex offenders that live in that county. So they were doing what the sex offense told them to do.
And the charges on this says, it doesn't say anything about biting. It says that you touched the breast and buttocks.
Listen, I didn't post it. The devil did. Elizabeth Bartholomew, that's her writings. If she even was so brazen to email my probation agent, because I asked my probation agent, who was pretty cool. I said, ask this bitch to give you the cite the law and whatnot, and tell her I'm gonna sue their asses and whatnot. And she was so arrogant to tell my agent Davids that she said she couldn't accompany her at the hearing because she had an advisory section board meeting. And she said, don't worry, he can't sue us or anybody else because we have immunity from all prosecution. He groped a woman on her genitals. See, now it went from a breast bite to grabbing on her ass, and now grabbing her crotch. I mean, the devil they don't quit. They're relentless in their and don't realize. And this is what got me around immunity. Her lies.
Before we get to that, let me make sure, Dr. Cheney, do you have any more questions? Because we need to get into the legal portion of it.
No, you can go ahead.
All right, so we're about to discuss the legal injustices for this. Mr. Shabazz, thank you so much for your time. My heart goes out to you. I can't imagine being falsely accused and then it being promulgated throughout the community for people. It's like they're adding insult to injury.
Yo, they did.
And this was every 6 months. They would come around and bring this posting, the latest version of the posting would come out.
Wow.
This wasn't just once.
No, they had me to come every 6 months. He'd take a picture of me, and then they post that on the website or whatnot. And the continuing harm here is, even though I'm off the registry, I did get a legal name change and whatnot because
your audio just went out. Okay.
He'll be back in a moment.
So we're about to let him go anyway. So wow. All right, Dr. Cheney, I'm gonna let you go. And John, since you're more familiar with this, I would let you talk more about the injustice here. But yeah, this is a wild case. Dr. Cheney.
I mean,
I don't know what I'm going to say. It's a sad story. False accusations are extremely harmful, and it hurts all of us. I don't know what more to say.
What are some of your thoughts?
Well, we get the pro se business. Doesn't work for everybody. It's painful hearing his story, and even I just can't. I wanted to know if there was any recanting from the person who said that this crime actually occurred, because sometimes people go back and change their stories and tell what they feel to be the truth.
I noticed you were asking a lot of questions about the spark that started the fire, this
Yes.
incident in the bank. Does that seem to resonate more with you than the actual placing on the sexual offense, the registry?
I mean, it's all connected. It's horrifying to, you go through the process. Initially, you got the hug, and then after the hug, you have as far as I could recall, you have the introduction to somebody. But if a person is assaulted in any kind of way, probably the only thing you would do, even though people are different, the only thing I would see that the person would do is sort of scream and ask for help at that point, instead of asking for some kind of social interaction.
John, do you know if he was represented at that hearing, the initial one in DC, for the alleged assault against the woman in the bank?
I believe he was represented, at that time. But let's go with where Dr. Cheney was there. Okay, maybe the most natural reaction of the teller would have been as Dr. Cheney described, that, if somebody assaults you, here would have been your... But all right, let's play this out fully and say, well, this is one of those unusual situations where she didn't react right away, maybe, and now afterwards she comes to some realization that this was a bad thing. Let's say that could happen. But again, nobody testified on her behalf. Nobody at the bank testified on her behalf. The video footage shows nothing. Now the video footage, let me back up a minute and say, I've known Mahdi Shabazz over a dozen years, so that the people understand this. I knew him long before any of this started. I knew him when he was doing his community activism. I was an advisory neighborhood commissioner in the District of Columbia in Ward 5, and that's where his nonprofit was located, where he was doing a number of things, but I recall in particular like summer continuing ed programs for children, school age kids, as well as there was adult training programs, because the ANC that I represented funded some of his programs. So that's how I got to meet him in 2007, 8, that time frame. So when this happened in 2010, I had known him a few years, and I'm thinking, you can see he's a colorful personality. And he's doing a lot to, shall we say, restrain himself for this setting. He's not letting it all loose. But even so, there's no way he does this. I know him. This is not the kind of person he is. And so he goes to the trial. And yeah, there's the video. You can't see them at every single moment on the video, but everything on that is the extra evidence that you can see, nothing happens. There is no assault on the video. And the judge, because again, I went and sat in on the trial, the judge acknowledges this, that the video does not show this. And the judge acknowledged that, well, I don't think there's a lot of evidence here, and it's probably going to get overturned on appeal, but I'm going to convict you anyway.
Okay, so stop right there.
Injustice number one.
Okay, so two things I want to point out with that. One, we see how something very small, if left, could balloon up into something very huge. Remember the case with Amir, when he got the CPO, because of the text messages he was angry that his ex-wife kidnapped the kids. And now, as a result, 2 years later, he can't even get his kids back because of that. So that's one. Two, we talk about how the system is actually a legit system, but the people, this particular judge did not do the right thing, because the law says if you don't have enough evidence to convict, you must acquit. But the judge didn't do that. Now, did he appeal?
He tried to appeal. That's when he began to lose having representation, all that happened on appeal was that where he mentioned earlier that he was convicted of 2 charges, which essentially were overlapping. That is, a simple assault and a misdemeanor sexual assault are overlapping offenses, and you can't be convicted of both of them because they're essentially the same thing. So on appeal, yeah, the simple assault charge got kicked out, which is why that posting you just showed was wrong, because that had been kicked out on appeal. But whatever happened, and that I was not following with him at the time, but he was not represented, or he certainly wasn't well represented. The Court of Appeals did not overturn the verdict. And so, and he didn't have a jury trial, he had only a judge trial. So I guess whatever it was, abuse of discretion, and they said, well, yeah, another judge might have done something differently, but we can't call this abuse of discretion. Right. And they didn't. So he was stuck with that. And so I've had the chance over the years to read his entire file, to read all of the different documents that have gone in and out of this. And so, yeah, CSOSA sends him to Maryland. Maryland says, we have the Adam Walsh Act, which the District of Columbia did not have at that time. And they say, well, we think you fit under this 3308. Now, you have 3308. Can you put that up so people can see? Because that's what they've been nailing him with essentially for a decade, is this Maryland criminal law section 3-308. And it's like, now this is the whole thing. They keep what's highlighted is what they focus on. A person may not engage in sexual contact with another without the consent of the other. Yes, that is there. But if you look at the entire statute, A, B, and C, the rest of it is talking about people in positions of authority over children. They're talking about minors, the position of authority with contact with a minor, et cetera, et cetera. The entire statute is talking about having illegal sexual contact with a minor. And he's provided to both the state and wherever else now, the judges, the legislative history behind this section of law, which shows that the legislature labeled this statute when it was making changes to it about persons in authority over minors and about sexual contact with minors.
And this is what they were originally citing to justify.
They're still citing this. They're still citing this in documents today. He's guilty of 3308B1. That's what they have, what they're hanging their hat on is your offense in the District of Columbia is substantially similar to 3308B1. That made you a fourth tier, a tier 1 sex offender or somebody who had committed a sexual offense in the 4th degree in Maryland. But a sexual 4th degree in Maryland in 2010 was an offense against a minor.
Okay, so what doesn't make sense though is on one hand, you're saying they're using this statute to justify putting him on the registry. But on the other hand, they submitted a letter that said, we admit that he shouldn't have been on the registry.
Because he didn't meet the registration requirements, and he has been pressing them for a year now to say, it says here in this letter, right? It says, you did not meet the residency requirements. So he's asked them, well, what are the residency requirements? It sounds like something that would be in writing, right? You're a lawyer. Wouldn't you say when somebody writes something like that, oh yes, we have this guideline, this rule, this whatever that says here are the residency requirements. They refuse to answer that question.
So let's go back to the beginning.
Put up that other letter. The one that he got in discovery, because that is where they really get nailed. And no doubt why they didn't send it to him originally.
This one?
We start talking about the injustices. Notice there after the District of Columbia citation, it says, however, if the convicting jurisdiction does not require registration and the individual does not also meet the residency requirements at the time of the offense, Maryland cannot require registration. So they're admitting in 2016 that
that language is not
in the letter they sent him.
But these are both dated August 24th, 2000.
And they're both signed by Elizabeth Bartholomew. But what it says is that they knew, right? They knew that DC.
So let's all take a quick look at this, because this is an official letter from the state. It looks almost identical. Anybody looking at this, they see these two letters. Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah, they're 90% the same wording, and it's just that.
But right here in this sentence.
Yeah, right where you hit the however, that's where the wording changes.
The citation, and then it says is a registrable offense in this state. However, but then the other letter. Here's a citation, is a registrable offense, but there is no however. You see that?
However is lower.
Yeah, in a separate sentence here.
Right, and now there's a new however, and they leave off the first part of the sentence that is in the other letter.
Right, so there's clearly two separate letters, even though, do you think that this letter was actually written at a much later time, but they just tried?
No. That letter was written because he's shown me the emails going back and forth. Again, discovery, they're showing the emails, and between Ms. Bartholomew and Ms. Barr, there are emails going back and forth right at this time, August 23rd, August 24th, 2016. And where she says, well, here's one. Well, how about this one? So she's sending letters to her attorney saying, well, what about this one? And I suspect the other letter you had up was the letter she wrote first, the one that says if the convicting jurisdiction does not require registration. And Ms. Barr says, maybe not, try something else. And that's when she writes this letter, and this is the one they send. But the point here is from the injustices, what they're saying is, we knew this. DC, we have the emails from DC. We cannot require him to register. This is in December of 2010 when they're transferring him over. They are telling Maryland directly, we cannot require him to register. But you guys have Adam Warr, so we don't know. You figure it out. He's your resident, but we can't touch him. So they knew that in 2010. They knew where he lived. I mean, come on, how did they not know where he lived? So if they knew that DC couldn't put him on, and they knew where he had been living since at the time of the offense, how is it that they had any basis, whether 3308 applied, which again, our argument has always been, it doesn't. That's what Mr. Shabazz has been making totally clear, that it's about children. But even if it did, your letter is saying, if DC can't require you, and you don't meet the residency requirements, we can't require you. I think that language comes from the interstate compact about sex offense registries, about, well, when somebody's being transferred between jurisdiction to figure out whether you can put them on in the new jurisdiction, the first thing you need to go back and look at is their offense in the originating jurisdiction, and was that person required to be registered in that jurisdiction? The answer in Mahdi's case is no. And they put him on anyway. And they insisted. Again, all the letters after that, you were under 3308, or the email, which I think you have as well, where they said, no, he's on this thing and we know we're right and he can't touch us because we're immune. I've read the email.
So,
and up until somebody who they weren't going to mess with, when, Nancy Forrester was not somebody they were going to mess with. She wrote the law. She defended, she argued the no case in front of the Court of Appeals when they said the legislative act was an ex post facto law. That is, they were making it retroactive, which was an abrogation of many people's rights, including Mahdi Shabazz.
So as we wrap up, Dr. Cheney, we talked about negligence, gross negligence. What do you see this being?
Definitely gross
Gross. It's a
negligence.
huge mistake with huge consequences.
Again, they knew. I mean, in other words, this isn't just some dumb little thing that they've tried. Well, we had reasonable belief. No. You knew in 2010 that all the things were stacked against you being able to do this, and you did it anyway. That is, it would be the ultimate in being reckless, at minimum reckless.
Almost borderline intentional.
Intent. I mean, his argument, they wanted me on, and they figured they shoehorned some way to get me on because they didn't figure I could fight them.
Which is why he's so angry. We heard the anger from him coming.
Right, righteously so.
This man was placed on a sex registry with his picture for 6 years with a sex offense that most people understood to be to minors, based on what you're saying, John.
Well, certainly the law that they cited, and again, that law is cited in that posting that you saw. It said 3308. Now, most average people aren't going to look, but if anybody looked, that's a sex offense against minors.
Wow.
Anybody who reads that statute is going to say, "Oh, he must have abused some child."
Wow. All right, we've gone over, but we'll continue to monitor Mr. Shabazz and his case. They've admitted they're wrong, and so now it's just a matter of going after them for the wrong that they've done and the damages that he's resulted from it. And because it's gross, there's that punitive level.
Yes, he's asked for punitive damages. So, and at no point has any judge said, no, you can't ask for punitive damages, Mr. Shabazz. So 2 motions to dismiss and a motion for summary judgment, he's overcome all of those. So I presume if punitive damages was a problem, some judge would have noted it by now, and none of them have. So
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see. We're going to continue to follow. John Salati is very closely related to the case, so he'll continue to give us an update. And I hope, Dr. Cheney, you got all the, I know you had a lot of more questions for him, but we were running out of time. But we'll
No,
have
I'm good.
we'll have him back on the show. We'll have him back on the show. And that's it. Subscribe on the button, the little red button. Keep the questions and concerns coming in. The legal zone at remuslaw.com. And we will see you again next time. Thank you, John. Thank you, Dr. Cheney.
great
Okay.
being here, Salon. Take care.
All righty.
Bye.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.